Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our first session of our GitHub Copilot Study Guide series, GitHub Copilot Plans and Features. My name is Anna, and I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we begin, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand within 24 to 48 hours on our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to Ari. Ari, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Ari Levigny. I am with GitHub. I previously have been with AWS, Red Hat, and VMware, implementing and designing cloud solutions and DevOps solutions for those for both internal and external customers. I'm really happy to be with you today to cover some of the GitHub Copilot plans and features, both within our IDE as well as in github.com, and also some things to show from our marketplace. I'll also try to highlight some things that you've probably heard about from GitHub Universe that just ended last week, and we'll dive deep into those. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code for any of the demos that I'm doing within a code space. But everything can also be done in other IDEs as well, which I will highlight as we go through. And with that, one more thing is that this is part of our GitHub Copilot certification series. So I think this will help you as you study for your exam as well in your certification. So with that, let's get into the agenda for today. I'm going to be covering the subscription plans and some of the differentiators between them, what's included with individual business and enterprise. Then we'll dive into some of the key Copilot features within the IDE, as well as some features within github.com. There are some of those features that kind of border both IDE are available in each. So I will try to highlight those as we go through. And then I'll also highlight some of our marketplace features like extensions and models. And so we'll get to that towards the end of the presentation and demos. So the subscription plans, as you can see here, this is kind of the high level view of our subscription plans. I'd also like to mention that all of this is in our documentation for GitHub Copilot Docs. You can go through and see the same data that I'm showing you here that's on this slide. But as you can see on the left side here, we have individual, which encompasses it's a $10 per month or $100 per year. If you are an educational institution or student or some other type of open source community, you can take advantage of possibly getting that individual license for free. So keep that in mind. But this allows you to get the code completions in IDE, Copilot Chat in your IDEs as well. There's availability in GitHub Mobile. I'm not going to be demoing GitHub Mobile today since it's kind of hard to do in this kind of setting. And then we'll talk about GitHub Copilot in chat in github.com. I'm not going to highlight, but a new feature that rolled out, was announced at Universe, was GitHub Copilot in the Windows terminal. I will be walking through some examples with Copilot in the CLI so that we can kind of just see how using the CLI, and I'm going to actually use that in my code space. So there's certain features that may not be available inside of a code space when using the CLI, but all features within your IDE will be available. I'll also try to highlight, we'll try to maybe show an example of blocking public code, and that is available as well. And I will highlight pull request summaries, which will be in the in github.com, and Copilot Chat skills in the IDEs and how we can use them and highlight that. I'm going to definitely spend a lot of time in VS Code kind of highlighting how you can get to the different features and skills within the IDE itself. Some of the add-on now as we go to the middle of this slide where we have GitHub Copilot Business. It's $19 per granted seat per month. And this allows excluding specific files from Copilot at both at the organizational and the repository level, and allows you to have organization-wide policy management. You can also look through audit logs and search through them to gather data on what Copilot's doing, any changes from an admin standpoint that was done at the organization level, so that you can glean more information on what's going across your organization. And obviously that's targeted at more of our business users. And then we have increased GitHub model rate limits when we get to the business level. So obviously we have all the features of individual plus these added features for business. And then as we get into this last tier here with GitHub Copilot Enterprise, which is at $39 per granted seat per month, Copilot knowledge bases comes into play, and fine-tuning models, large language models. And what that is that allows you to then train, maybe you have proprietary code or an older language, and you can train the models on your specific code base, which is maybe more, you'll get better responses because it's more in tune with your code base. We will cover some knowledge base items as well and indexing repositories as we go through. So let's get into kind of a list of the features that we're going to cover. Code completion, Copilot Chat, CLI, as I mentioned, pull request summaries, text completion, and I highlighted some of these that are in public preview, as well as knowledge bases, which is for Copilot Enterprise only. All of this information is in our documentation, so feel free to peruse through that and do searches through our documentation to find some details on this. I will try to also highlight that in the documentation as we go, just so if you wanted to go back later and look up some of that detailed info, you can. So features within the IDE, and I'm going to jump to my kind of minimize my slides here, and we'll go to my code space. Hopefully you can all see this pretty well. But when you come into the IDE, this is VS Code, obviously. JetBrains and Visual Studio Code has, and so does Xcode now, actually, that we announced at Universe, has the ability to use Copilot and Copilot Chat integrated into the IDE. Just bring up my notes. But at the bottom here, since we have the extensions installed, so I already have my extensions installed for both Copilot and Copilot Chat. And here it's actually asking me to do an update. I'm not going to do that right now since we're in a live demo, but there's frequent updates to the extensions as you go. I obviously have my code here. And here's the chat window. If you wanted to bring this chat window up, you could hit this little icon here, this little Copilot icon at the bottom. It says it's ready. There's some options already available that are specific to Copilot and Copilot Chat. So this would also bring up our window. The other thing I'd like to highlight is if you wanted to disable completions, or you want to disable completions for a certain language, you can do that. You can also edit settings here, and we'll jump into some of that later on. And then we can also edit keyboard shortcuts as well. There's links to our documentation directly here. So if you click this, it would just open up our link to documentation, and you can kind of go through this as well. I'll close that now. And the other thing I'd like to highlight too is that you can get diagnostic show open logs as well. We have our terminal down here. But if we wanted to see any output that's coming back from Copilot or Copilot Chat, we can actually bring that up right here in this little window. You could separate that window too if you like. There's also GitHub Copilot directly here in the output as well. This may look different, obviously, in other IDEs. So we're focused on VS Code for this demo and workshop in this series. But I just wanted to highlight that. I'll go back to my terminal. If you did want to use some shortcut keys, these are some really good things that I use all the time. So if you just want to bring up that chat window, you can do a Command-Shift-I, or if you're on a Windows keyboard, I believe it's Control-Shift-I, and then it would just pop up that. It's actually showing me in this new feature we showed at GitHub Universe was the ability to multi-edit and edit files. And so that's why that got selected automatically. But I'm going to go back to our chat here. And we can do all the commands that are available to us through Copilot Chat. We can do a help, and I'll walk through some of these as we go through. These are, as we get into some of this, but before we jump into that, I did want to show some basic features of Copilot and inline suggestions. So here we have this nice sample, pretty basic, calculator code up and running. And we could select this code and we can come into Copilot. We can do an explain of what this code's doing. It would then automatically open up in Copilot Chat and explain what this function's doing for us. And you could also, it will also prompt you, depending on your settings, a follow-up question. So Copilot Chat wants to engage you with having that conversation. I would say too, if you want to learn more of what best to use with Copilot or Copilot Chat, of when to use which one, I highly recommend going to our documentation and looking through what its strengths and weaknesses are, and when to use Chat versus just Copilot directly. So I just wanted to highlight that. And actually, what I'll do is I'll put that link in our chat here, so you have it. Obviously, different experiences as you go through different IDEs. I do all my software programming and engineering here in VS Code, just so it's convenient. It also, I enjoy taking advantage of code spaces because it's a nice environment that I can spin up, and you can make it very particular to the code that you are developing in. So I just wanted to highlight that. So we have this code that's been explained to us here, a nice summary of that. We could then thumbs up this, thumbs down if it wasn't helpful. Another great shortcut is maybe we wanted to look at other suggestions for this code. So we can hit a Control Enter, and that's the same on both Mac and Windows keyboards as a shortcut. And what we'll do is it'll actually highlight some suggestions for us. And if we wanted to change this code to what the suggestions are from Copilot, we could automatically do that and accept it there. That's a really cool shortcut to have handy if you wanted some options of what you wanted to accept. And let me see if I can just grab, there we go. A little short real estate here. So that can show us that as well, and you can right click on the code. The other thing that I wanted to highlight too is this kind of ghost text as well, is that right now we see that we have an error, but Copilot's telling us, okay, you're just missing this parens, and that will fix that as well. Or let's say you didn't want to accept or you didn't want to take that ghost. You can tab to accept, or you can also escape to not accept, and it will remove it. The other thing, if you wanted to bring inline chat into your editor here, you could do that very easily with it should be Command I on the Mac, and that would be Control I on your Windows machines for a shortcut. And as you can see here, I can include a file if I wanted to, attach context. If I wanted to switch my models, so something else that I'd like to highlight at Universe that was announced is that we have we've added several models, which, as you can see, are indicated in preview. We announced Claude 3.5 Sonnet, Gemini 1.5 Pro, and O1 Mini and O1 Preview, which are OpenAI models. And our default, though, is GPT-4o that we will use for all our chat. I believe our inline editing that completes is actually still 3.5 turbo, and that's just for verbosity tokens and things of that nature. I'm sure at some point that may move forward, but that's kind of where we are at now. So if I wanted to close this out, or if I wanted to escape, I can go back. I'll accept the fix to this, which we know is just we were missing a parentheses there. But pretty cool stuff there. I'm going to also now show if we wanted to generate some tests, we could do that. And I'll bring up my command line to do that. Yeah. So if we wanted to write maybe some unit tests for this code, and I wanted to use chat. One of the things to highlight is we are in chat now. You can do the multi-editor here if you wanted to add more files than what's open. Automatically, Copilot, if you had multiple files open, it's going to look at all the neighboring tabs in that file. If you were to use some of the, and I'm going to describe and get into some of the details on chat participants / commands that we kind of showed briefly in the help, and also chat variables, which come into play and are very important to you when you're kind of describing your code or giving Copilot more of that context, I would say. So now if we wanted to write tests for this, we could do that pretty easily. Here in this case, I'm telling it to write unit tests for this calculator.js file. I've actually named the file, but obviously it already has it open, so I might not need that context. And then what I've also provided here is an example, which helps Copilot even get more context on what I'm looking for in feedback or what I want as a response for testing that I want to create. I know Damian Brady did an awesome Prompt Engineering 101 course earlier, and I believe he has a follow-up coming in December 11th. That's part of this series that he's going to go even more in depth in prompting. But we call this in prompting a one-shot or few shot, where we're not just providing a question to Copilot, but we are also giving an example so we know how we want Copilot to respond. I tend to use that all the time, especially when I want a specific response or I want my code to be formatted in a certain way and I wanted to give an example. So let's see what Copilot does for generating this. So here we got back some tests here. We could obviously put this apply in the editor. We could insert that if we wanted to. We could just copy what was produced. We could even just create a new file or insert into terminal. You'll see too, Copilot's pretty smart about if you just wanted to insert into terminal of knowing if it's a command that should be run, or maybe it's just code and that should be inserted. So you may not have that hidden. That's why these are kind of on the 3 dot and are not there automatically. So it kind of shows you what you can do just with using some of the built-in features. One of the other things that I'd like to highlight, besides obviously we can get to Copilot features this way, but if we wanted to go to the command palette, all the Copilot and Copilot Chat, you could do an open walkthrough, which has some nice videos to kind of learn how Copilot works if you wanted to do that outside of this session. You could accept add file to chat. So a lot of the things that I've showed you in shortcuts and clicking the icons, you can also get here directly from the command palette. And I think it's pretty useful that you have multiple ways, depending on the way you work, to get that in to get tied into Copilot or Copilot Chat in that specific way that you feel more comfortable working in. So with that, I'm going to jump back to my slides real quick. Let's bring that up again. So let's talk a bit about these chat participants, as they're called. And chat participants are AI domain experts that can perform tasks or answer questions in a specific domain. So obviously we're in this VS Code IDE. So we want to maybe take into account and have Copilot look at everything that's within our workspace. So that may be multiple repositories that we have checked out for a project. And that's what the at workspace kind of tells Copilot to do. Copilot Chat can infer relevant chat participants based on your natural language prompt, which we can do with this at workspace or at VS Code. Or if you want to do something in a terminal, at Azure or even GitHub, these are built-in chat participants. I will talk later about extensions, which is really using third-party ways of doing this, like Docker or Sentry. You can even create your own. We have the ability that you can build your own extension, and we'll get into that later on in this workshop. But essentially, you can prefer to use these. So like, for example, like at Workspace has context about the code in your workspace, as I said. VS Code has context about Visual Studio Code commands and features, or maybe developing towards the API in VS Code. So you can ask questions about that. At Terminal has context about the Visual Studio Code terminal shell and its contents using at Terminal. Azure has stuff about specifically Azure services that you want to use, deploy, or manage, or maybe you just have a question about them, and that's what will allow you to kind of prompt Copilot to give you respond information specifically about Azure and Azure services. At GitHub has many features when it comes to looking at GitHub issues, GitHub pull requests. Maybe you just want to do a web search, or you also wanted to look up a knowledge base that you've created. And we'll touch on some of that later on as we get into that. When it comes to using slash commands, and some of these slash commands can also be used alongside of those chat participants because they may be relevant. Like, so you may want to say, obviously we showed you help already. I'll show clear, which you can do either via an icon or you can do that slash command. But the slash explain, slash fix can be done using the workspace chat participant alongside of it. And we can look at that as well, of all of the files that's in the workspace. And then they, as you can see here too, we have just general fix, explain, and clear. Then we'll get into some chat variables. So this would mean what you've currently selected. So it would take into account the lines that you've selected that you want to kind of hone in on Copilot and Copilot Chat on those specific, that section that you've selected. Maybe it's your entire code base that's open right now. Maybe it's only what's open in the editor. Terminal last command, I use that very frequently. That's really helpful if you're on the command line and you end up getting an error and you're not really sure, like, what does this error mean for my code that I ran? Like, what happened here? Terminal last command can then look at that error, look at the command that you issued, and give you a really nice response or explanation of maybe what went wrong and a suggestion of how to fix it in your code. Or maybe it's something that was done on the command line that you need to change your command to get a better result. Same applies here for terminal selection as well. And then files would be any specific file that you wanted to highlight. And we can, before we get into github.com, let's go back and show some of those. So in this case, obviously we have a file open, but let's say I wanted to, I could do the multi-line editor here, but I could also just do a file. And then I want to say, let's see, citer, and so it's telling me to provide. So let's do file. Let's do quick sort. So let's provide that context to it. Let's add, as you can see, we can do the code base, current editor, or we can go here to a specific file. So let's go to this file here. And we'll do close this. So that explains our calculator again, but let's do a multi-file editor here. I'm going to add a file. I'm going to put this file in there, and I'm going to say explain. So it also like explained this file to me, but what it did too is it kind of said you're missing really the what the function should be doing, and it wrote me a quick thing to print this out and run this here. So if I wanted to accept this, I could do that. And then I could highlight this, or I can hit Control Enter and maybe bring up some other suggestions. And it's doing this based too on the comment that's in this file. Just draw this here. It's a long file name. Whoop, and we lost our chat. That's okay. But you can open up multiple files. So like, for example, if I wanted to maybe I have these files open in my editor. So let me close these, and I'm going to bring up these other files. So let's bring up that one. Let's bring up this one and this one. Now it automatically brought up workspace. So if I wanted to take workspace out and just really focus on these, you also, with your prompting, may want to get more specific, or you're looking for something in here. So it's summarized each of these files for me by just doing that explain, and I've selected all those files. This is what's in my opened in my neighboring tabs. I can add other files here if I want that are open up in my editor that way as well. And I can look through this and I can say done. This will allow you to do open editing directly in those files and get suggestions to accept and then use them. Something else I wanted to highlight too as we go into the dash help. We can do terminal commands. So let's say we didn't want to even look at these files now. We wanted to maybe find out some information. We can do the /clear to maybe start a whole new chat session. You could also do this. You can click this plus button. You could also, this will do open Copilot edits for you as well. That just shifts to that if we had any open files that we're editing. And this does a history of any of your past prompts that you've issued. And you can open up new windows, chat editor, but that's what's available here right in the chat window. Obviously, you have availability right to go to the chat participants right in here. And if we wanted to fix anything or change anything or explain, we can do that. These are VS Code specific. But let's say we wanted to do a terminal explain, and we do and this gives us an example of, okay, what does this actually, this command do, and it responds with some examples here. If you wanted to then execute these on the command line, we can do those as so. And we can update our packages that way in our workspace. We could do an upgrade or install certain packages. So let's say I wanted to find out how to install let's go at terminal. How do I install MongoDB? And right there, I can get the command. I could also redo this in case I wanted to regenerate it. I can thumbs up it if it was successful, or thumbs down if it was not. I could then just issue this in the terminal and then run that command. I want to show this again also with the CLI directly, so I'm going to not do that right now. But yeah, that kind of shows some of the functionality that we can do if we want to do a workspace explain. And it's already offering up a suggestion for us. explain all my open projects. So we got to get more specific. So let's ask Copilot what details we should have. So let's go to our example up here in our demo. And again, we wanted to, we made this change here. So I wanted to get some more information and then have a try here and change this code. I could then take this code and apply it just by clicking that button, and it's made the changes for me, and I can accept these changes. And now we have a little bit of error checking for this simple function that we have here. The other thing to note too, if you wanted Copilot to maybe ignore files that are open in neighboring tabs, you can click this here and then it would not take into account that current file as well. So a lot of features that you can do here with slash commands. Just want to see if there's anything else you wanted to highlight. You could also do docs for this. So if you wanted to do slash docs, or doc, I should say. And it's going to add some example of usage here as well. Test for this. This setup test is in preview right now, but it is available as well through your IDE. So let's configure a test framework. We could do PyTest, and it'll tell us where to put it if we wanted to do that, or in a certain workspace. I should say a certain repository if we wanted to do that. Yeah, and then we'll get out of that. So that kind of rolls through, I think, a lot of the features that you can do in some of the commands, both with chat participants, with slash commands, and also the chat variables as well. I would say another great thing to highlight, that if we wanted something that was maybe a little bit more comment development, as we call it, if we wanted to come here and we can go to some of the, let me go down to here. Let's say we wanted to build a calculator, or we wanted to do just a demo in like a rock. We want to create a rock, paper, scissors. Let's do that. So let's go here. I don't have any files open or created. I do have this main file that doesn't have anything. Again, it's already kind of prompting you if you wanted to bring up chat here directly in the IDE. You could do that by hitting Command I, Command I, and in Windows that would be Control I there. But let's say we wanted to actually, let me just grab my example of here of what I want to copy and paste in for. So let's say we wanted to create like a locker distribution. We're handing out locker codes to students, and how would we do that? I'm just gonna, it's highlighted. So I have this commented here. Let me just move it over so we can see it. And automatically, Copilot wants to continue that conversation here in my IDE and complete my suggestion with another comment. So we definitely want it to be unique. So I'm going to say tab and select that. It should be a 4-digit integer digit number. And passcode should be easy to remember, or do I not want that maybe? But sure, let's take that. Let's see where it takes us. And you'll notice too that Copilot may do some, we call them hallucinations or repetitive or redundancy. So you can get out of that by hitting enter and keep moving down. We already know we want it to be unique. Now, if we see Copilot keep doing this, and that's fine. We can tell Copilot So it'll keep prompting us. We know we want that. Now let's see if we can get to the coding part here. It's still doing that, and that's okay. I'm going to mix it up here and actually give it a different comment. So I'm going to get rid of all of this because I don't like where Copilot's headed. We know it's going to be unique. It's already said that. So I kind of triggered it myself to import a random library since we want this to be unique, which is fine. Keep in mind that Copilot will do that sometimes, that it will be repetitive. The other thing to show too, and we got actually a better comment. I like that. And it's going to be a string. And now let's get into actually coding something up. So we're going to generate a code function here. The other thing I wanted to highlight before we do that is you can also bring up Copilot to fix or explain this directly when you see these little stars here. That's just the AI, another tip of when you're using it. We're going to return this. I'm going to generate a rows and columns of a matrix, and it's automatically come up with some suggestion here for code. Sometimes the code may be more complex, or it's a more intricate thing for Copilot to solve. So always give it time to think too when it's coming up. And we can print the locker. I'm just going to take what's here. We want to run this. And that should be, this is just examples of what we're going to see as data. So I think we're good there. I'm actually going to get rid of this here. So if we were to go into and use Python. And here we automatically created a program that has some locker combinations that we can pass out. We have our matrix of how many rows and columns that we wanted to create this in. And we've used Copilot to do that along the way. We can also, if we wanted to, maybe create a rock, paper, scissors game. So if I was to start all over here, say create a rock. And I'm going to write a comment that says play against the computer. Display the score. Again, it's not something that I want, so I'm going to escape that. I'm going to put a comment that says prompt. Oops. Play again. It already finished what I was thinking there by just putting prompt, and the computer will play the results. We know we need, again, using the random library here. Get user choice. Get the winner. Let it think for a little bit. I brought up see some other options that are here for get winner. Sure, we'll take this one, and I'll accept that one. And I had some suggestions to choose from there. Let's play the game. One of the things, though, that we're missing is add code to allow me to play again. So it's going to look at the contents of the file and see where we need to add that. I'm going to trust that it knows where to add this in. It's going to apply that, and I'm going to accept those changes. So it's a loop of that hopefully we can walk through again. And it did ask me if I wanted to. So just by prompting Copilot Chat, which I could have done in the editor here, I could have done it in the Copilot Chat window like I did. I could then add that code, and I can try again and see what we get. Cool, computer wins. So I could also keep iterating on this, and I would say that's something you want to do with Copilot. Obviously, as you're coding, you're always iterating on what you're developing. You want to allow Copilot to have that conversation and add on to your code. It already knows the context from the files you have open, or maybe you have multiple files for a project open. It knows what to do there. So I'm going to get out of that. Cool. Let's jump back to, before we go actually to github.com, I'm going to do one more thing here with our CLI. So the CLI can be installed. There are links here about the CLI. If you go to use here and you go to using the CLI here, I'm going to put that link in. This is a really useful link to have as well. And let's go back here, and I'll do a quick command here. So Copilot, it's already installed. You can see from an extension list. Awesome. And then I want to do a Copilot. And the same thing that I did on the command line, I did a GitHub Copilot suggest how do I install MongoDB? Oh, and I misspelled it, but hopefully Copilot general shell command. And let's explain it. So it's telling me here on this, I can use brew. Maybe I want to revise my command, and I say, how do I install MongoDB on Ubuntu, since that's the system that we're on in this code space. And it did make the suggestion here of what I wanted. It will explain the command if I want and give more details. I noticed in the code space here, execute and copy have some issues, but in your IDE, you won't have those issues. You can also rate your response here too as well. So just wanted to highlight what you can do with the CLI directly. It doesn't have to be in the IDE. You can just have it installed on your system and use it there as well in the same fashion. So cool. Let's jump into github.com since we're getting through time here, and I want to leave time for getting through everything. So yeah, here we go. So this kind of shows what we can do with pull request summaries in github.com. Also text completions. As you can see, this animation here is showing you, some text that it's telling me that I want to maybe add to this based on the changes. I use pull request summaries all the time. I find it sometimes tedious to constantly have to put to notify my peers of all the changes of the files I've touched, and the summary really helps with that, as well as the text completion. You can also, as you can see on the right side here, you can add Copilot as a reviewer of your code, which is a new feature that we've added that is available, I believe, in all the SKUs as well. So individual, business, and enterprise. So I'll show you that. I actually have one open already, I believe. Yeah. So I have this file open already, and I can show you this live of if we wanted to do a summary. It's automatically going to look and see what changes I made in the file and give me a summary for this. We'll take a minute to come back. As it says, it might take a minute. And there you go. So now it showed me, I updated the doc, the README. I added information about various demos, examples, and workshops. and what I put into in a bulleted list here of the documentation updates that were made in the file. Like I said, I could also add on to this with some text completion. How else? And it already finished the text completion for me. If I wanted to request Copilot as a reviewer, I could do that. Copilot would then review my code. It's pending one reviewer. Oh, well, that's reviewing that. Copilot did offer up some suggestions of maybe I'm missing something. I have a typo here. As you can see, it identified that, which is great. I could commit this change directly. I could also open this up in a workspace. And that's really all the changes that Copilot had for me in that change. I won't merge this right now, but you can see how you can use Copilot interactively in github.com for your pull requests, for your text completion, for using Copilot as another peer reviewer beyond human beings, which is super helpful. I use it pretty frequently because, as you can see, I have typos in my code, as we all do. Let's go back to our slides here. Now I'll get into some more advanced features of indexing repositories and asking questions of repositories. Indexing repositories is important because it allows you to search through the docs that are there and the code, and Copilot can give you back better responses if you've indexed it. It's using our Blackbird search on the back end to do a lot of that. And this is kind of an example of it popping up on a repository, this test repo that I have that does not have any, that's not indexed yet. The other thing that I'll show is, if we go back to, let's go to the repositories here that I have open, and I go to my test repository, bringing up Copilot in asking questions about a repository or a knowledge base, which is usually is a combination of multiple repositories. So it's a ordering or a grouping, I should say, of repositories that are across or are being used for a project, and it basically has information about all of the MD and MDX files that are in those repositories. So then it can give you kind of a more robust answer as a response. So if I wanted to do that here, for example, in this test repo, I have not indexed this yet. I'm not going to click it here. I wanted to show kind of how this feature also works in the enterprise, but I could index that directly here. As you can see, it has some information that I had up before. If I wanted to reset this, there's some prompts that Copilot already gives us. We can do some of these chat participants here, or attach files. But let's say we wanted to use a knowledge base. So this is a knowledge base that I have now. And let's say I wanted to ask a question about specifically, let me see that we can ask here. So let's say we wanted to get information about our code space for our knowledge base. Yeah. So here I've selected that knowledge base that has only one repository inside of it. It said one repository. It's going to search through that for documentation. It says it couldn't find it, but it's telling me because we're in this test repo here. Let's see if we go to Copilot. Knowledge bases are set up here in the organization, and you can set up obviously multiple of them. I'm going to decrease this, but this is a knowledge base that I was trying to look through. And let's say I wanted to add maybe the test repo to that. You can also edit paths in here of certain, maybe your docs are in a certain directory structure and you don't want it to look at all your MD and MDX files. You can do that here. And then I can add another repository. So I'm going to add that test repo. And what you'll notice is when we add it and we update the knowledge base, you're going to see that it's going to start indexing the one that was not indexed before, that test repo. So if I was to come back here and I was to bring up chat again, let me just do a new one. I believe it's already being done. That's why the button was highlighted, but it's already being done for us in the background. But let's try to ask that question again off of the knowledge base. I'm going to do a new delete conversation. And this is without selecting the knowledge base. It appears that I couldn't find that. So let's see if we go to, oops. Now there's 2 repositories that are in our knowledge base. So it's telling me now, it's telling me where it is, and I can actually click here and it will take me right into the README. And I can look inside that repository and see here that where it's located. And that's just because in this README, I did put kind of information of where my code space configuration is. And that's how you can group repositories together for documentation for one knowledge base. So let's say you have documentation across your development community within your company, or maybe it's an open source project. You can do that and group those repositories together in a knowledge base. You can also ask about a specific repository if you'd like as well. But that's a lot of the same chat features that you have in the IDE that you also have here. As we're getting close to time, I didn't want to miss out on some of the other cool features that we have. So that's really covers indexing, knowledge bases here, kind of shows this also live. Kind of asking the same question down below in the animation here. And I will provide you with here's some documentation too on, oops. Copy, yeah, there we go. I'm going to put some docs here on asking, using Copilot knowledge bases within asking questions within the IDE, as well as asking in github.com. One thing I did want to highlight here, as you can see in this slide, while this is great that we can index, keep in mind that with these plans too, I wanted to highlight in the subscription plans that the repository limit for individual is 5, that you can index 50, and then unlimited for enterprise as well. So let's get into some of the marketplace items, or I should say features. There is Copilot extensions, as I mentioned, which are chat participants of third-party services and applications or software that you might use, such as Docker, such as Sentry. Perplexity AI is listed here. And then also there's models that are available. Damian Brady did a great job kind of demoing what those models look like, how they work. So I'm not going to take up time doing that. I'm sure he'll probably go into more detail in his next session in December. But this gives you an idea too in the marketplace. So let me copy and paste that link. This is really great stuff if you wanted to play around or look at extensions. I see my links didn't get put in for the other one. Let me do that now. Copy link. So that's on that one. And there we go. Now we got it in there for the Ask in GitHub. But the marketplace here, you can peruse extensions. And if you wanted to install an extension, you can go to that extension, say add. You can install it. So here, if I wanted to install it inside of this organization, these are all the organizations I have available to me. I can do that. It's going to take me to this window. I'm going to complete and install that in there. It's already installed in my continuous Copilot organization, and just give some install and authorize. I'm just going to authorize that. And then just takes you to kind of the page there. And yeah, let's come back to the marketplace. Again, this is the models too. If you wanted to peruse through those models, you could bring one of these up. If you wanted to maybe play around with a model that's available, one of the preview models, you could do that here. It would take you there. To go to Playground, you can get an API key, and you can put parameters in there or do a prompt depending. I believe if you want to switch the model out, you get some more options here for some of these other models that are available. So you can play around with them and see what LLM maybe works better, differently, and that's something that you can do off of our marketplace directly. Cool. So with that, I'll say like what's next. Actually, let me go back one slide. I highly recommend going to our blog. Let me just find the main. Yeah. So with several of our you can look up a lot of the new features that are coming out, features that have already been shipped, maybe that are in preview. This is a great spot to do that. I'm going to actually grab the links from here. You can actually use the labels for the different endpoints, like such as Copilot, Copilot for Business, Copilot Chat, and Copilot Enterprise. So let me put those in the chat here. I think those are useful to have. Oh, I just didn't copy the links again. But you can look these up directly yourself too if you want to. Let's see if I have them in my notes. And yeah. So I'll copy one of them, but you can actually go to and drop down and see which one that you want. This is the main one for Copilot. If you did want to look at another one, you can just drop down here and then select. We have all these different labels and categories for the different blogs and change logs that we have. So if you just want to look for GitHub Business, you can just select that right from the drop down there. But I highly recommend going there and staying up to date. We're constantly, we ship to learn, so we're constantly releasing new content. And I'm always, I have an RSS feed that looks at all the latest and greatest that's coming out for it. And that'll keep you up to date on any changes or new features that are coming out. I hope this was useful to you. I really thank you for the time and allowing me to kind of roll through some of the cool features we have in the IDE, some of the great features we have in github.com, the different SKUs and subscription plans that we have available, and you can find the right one that fits for you. So again, thank you for taking the time and sharing it with me today. I really appreciate it. And you'll have a great day.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much to Ari for a fabulous session. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. Today's event code is 23718. We'll see you at the next one.